Good evening, Wakefield, and Happy New Year. I hereby call this Town Council meeting of Monday, January 8th, 2024 to order at 7 p.m. To ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3 is attendance. I'm joined by all of my fellow councilors this evening. Vice Chair McLean is remote, as is Town Administrator Mayo. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Mayo, from some well-deserved time off. We will move on to item number 4, public engagement. Sherry, do we have anyone online?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. We have David Bisson online. I can bring him over.
Great. All right. While he's coming over, just as a reminder, we would ask Mr. Bisson and anyone else giving comment to please state their name and address and limit their comments to 3 minutes. While the council may not choose to engage in discussion at this time, the council may or may not choose to bring the issue up at a future meeting. So we'll wait for Mr. Bisson to come over.
Hi, Dave. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. Please go ahead, Mr. Bisson.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to talk. Just going to set a quick timer so I have an idea of how long it's been. We'll go with 2 minutes, 45 seconds. Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on some comments I made on December the 11th, 2023, before the council in regards to the conflict in Israel-Palestine. I thought I would offer something. I know tonight's meeting is primarily about budget. So I did want to just relay some figures that relate sort of the amount of taxpayer dollars that the United States provides to the state of Israel annually and is considering supplemental funding at this time, and related to the amount of that funding that is estimated to come from Wakefield taxpayers, and imagining some potential other uses of that funding in relation to what is happening there now. So just I will link to this to the council so you have a source, but in terms of U.S. military funding to Israel, using a calculator from the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, they come out with, for the base annual amount that the United States is sending, which is $3.8 billion annually through a 10-year memorandum of understanding with the state of Israel, it comes out to about $396,925, approximately, provided by Wakefield taxpayers. There is, President Biden has made a supplemental request, which may be heard this week. Senator Bernie Sanders has proposed blocking sending arms and blocking this funding. But if we added in that is reported to be $10.1 billion of supplemental, that would bring this year's 2024 annual total to $13.9 billion. Wakefield's proportion of that would be $1,451,910. So I just think that's a number that should be considered as we're thinking about budgets. Obviously, that's funding that potentially could come from the federal government to the town for other uses. I have 20 seconds on my clock, so I'm just going to say I've made some updates to my resolution. I think one of the most tragic would be the estimated death toll in Gaza last time was 18,000. It's now generally considered to be over 23,000, with 7,000 missing in the rubble. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bisson. Appreciate it. Ms. Dalton, any other individuals for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, that's it for tonight.
All right. Seeing none in the room, we'll move on to item number 5, fiscal year 2025 budget preview. So I do feel strange saying that given that it is January 8th of 2024, but we begin our journey through the fiscal 2025 budgets tonight. So Mr. Mayo, I believe you're going to kick us off with some table setting slides.
Yes, if someone could put that up for me, thank you. Thank you for, I think, WCAT accommodating me and making the changes. So I think it is very strange to say fiscal year 25, and we will certainly say fiscal year 24, or I'll say it many times over the next few weeks. So I'm sure that you guys will catch me. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. WCAT, please. Thank you. So anyways, I like to start every year about where we are, and I always like to look at our current reserve status at this time. Much better than when we were entering into fiscal year 24. Stabilization fund looks good at 3.3 million. We do have a sped stabilization fund of 300,000 that hasn't been touched as well, although we don't really count that as part of our reserves, but it is there. Free cash at 6.5 million. Our reserve fund for our finance committee hasn't been touched yet this year, and we usually don't touch that till the spring or June. And anyway, OPEB, a great success story at 29 million, and water and sewer reserves are together about $2 million. So this is really a very, very healthy area we are right now, and probably as healthy as we've been over the last 10, 15 years. Next slide, please. And I think the council is all aware of this, that all of these items are within our reserve policy, and these policies are very important, and we've looked at them over the years. In fact, a couple of years ago, we did look at a policy about using some of these reserves to limit the use of the tax levy. And in fact, we did that this last fiscal year. We left some money, some of this reserves in the taxpayer's pocket. So I think we're in good shape there as well. Next slide, please. And even going further, I spent a lot of time on forecasting with the Finance Committee, and we really feel that if things turn out the way we hope, and maybe there are some flies in the ointment given some of the local revenue at the state level that we're hearing about over these last few days, we really think that our free cash and stabilization funds will look very good over the next few fiscal years. Much better than we were projecting a year ago, and a lot of that has to do with new growth, particularly the power line finally being taxable this last fiscal year. Next slide, please. And if there are questions, we can do it at the end, or please stop me. So anyways, what is really important about these policies, I think anyway, is that it does really show that we are using best practices as we budget and we look for reserves and as we go forward, something that we've really worked hard on over the last few years. It does provide some direction for future policymakers. So, you know, these policies, some of them have been in place for a good, 10, 15 years now. It does provide some direction for, future boards, when they do look at our reserves and use of revenues and things like that. And I really believe another thing, and I know from our surveillance meetings with the rate setting agencies for our bond, is that they really hone in on these policies. And this has resulted in a AAA bond rating. And when you think about your mortgage, people refinance their mortgage and they're always waiting to get that, let's hit it at the bottom. Let's get that extra 0.5% or 0.25% off. And over the life of the loan, what that means to you. It means a lot to the town to have a AAA bond rating. And I'm really very confident to say that even a modest 25 or 50 basis points or a quarter of a point more or a half a point more on rates, if we didn't have a AAA bond rating, would probably be over $1 million that the taxpayers would have paid needlessly, to Wall Street when we could have had it in our pocket. Next slide, please. So we really do look when we start to create our budget. We do think about some of the priorities that the town has, and a lot of these are taken from the 2030 vision and some of the other items that we're looking at. Public safety, of course, is the probably the number one item on our agenda is safety of the public, and that really includes a heavy emphasis on mental health and substance abuse. We've spent a lot of time and resources the past few years, and I think it's making a difference. Roads, sidewalks, and streetscapes, I think the town council has been very clear, not only in our budget talks, but in our use of ARPA funds. And you are seeing more of that happening now, and over the next few years, they're going to see much better mobility all over the place and beautification. Accessibility is huge, and you'll notice on our intersections, whenever we're putting in new sidewalks, we are making sure that they are accessible. Capital improvements, of course, sustained economic development and growth. Lake Quannapowitt, very important to the entire community, and over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of money spent on stormwater runoff into the lake. Part of the ARPA funds, when we're looking at Vets Field, are to really make that parking lot a little bit better and help the stormwater runoff. Education, certainly completely important. We talked a lot about affordability of Wakefield for housing and equity, making sure that we are equitable around town. Next slide, please. So we put our budget together, and what do I know right now? I do know what this year's tax levy was, and I do know what next tax year's levy will be if we do a very simple math calculation, is multiply the existing tax levy and add it by 2.5%. I know we might not be there depending on where our reserves are at the end of the year, but that is a starting point for our policy. So I do know what that number is. Then it gets very murky after that. State aid. I have always been very robust on state aid. If I were doing this slide today, I might knock a few $100,000 off of this, but it isn't showing a huge increase anyway. So I'm thinking that state aid will be up slightly, particularly in the area of Chapter 70. You'll also note when we get to another slide, I'm also increasing what I think when you get to page 2 of our revenues from the state, which is what they take away from us, page 2 of the cherry sheet. I'm increasing some of those numbers a little bit. Local receipts have been great. It's a great story. This is everything from excise taxes to building fees to local licensing fees and things like that. That has been steadily going up. I think this is where you'll hear Dan Sherman, Kevin Gill, and I having a few different views on it, but I think that I'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation, but I think I'm feeling pretty good about forecasting at $8 million for local receipts next year. Gas and light department, that's part of our program with them, and that's their payment in lieu of taxes. So you may hear the terms pilot program, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. We also have free cash and available funds that we use to balance the budget. I am assuming that we will use $1 million in free cash to balance the budget this year, for next year. I already made the first mistake for 25. And new growth, I don't think we'll see the robust new growth that we saw this fiscal year, because we're not going to get the new growth for the power line again, but I do think we'll see a good new growth. Just have to look around and see the construction. So as I go down with this and I look at it one way, and Finance Committee looks at it and Kevin looks at it, I'm starting with a little under $117 million as anticipated revenue for fiscal year 25. And really going into today, I know what the tax levy is going to be. I feel very good about the MLD and local receipts, and then it gets a little bit murkier from there, as I said. Next slide, please. So how do we match expenses against that? So I looked at our operating budgets and increased those a little bit less maybe than some would like. but I like to keep that, at least have a starting point, and I increase all operating budgets by around 4%, and that includes the schools and the towns and the municipal side. Fixed costs, which we think about some of our costs, like the big one being health insurance and things like that. I increased that a little bit, not too much, and I'll go through a few of those later on. Capital, keeping that, it's very important we maintain our capital, so keeping that robust. Keeping the articles about the same, the biggest article being trash and recycling removal. Debt service, of course, we need to pay debt service on that, and we'll keep that on an even track. Overlay is, you're never going to collect all of the taxes that are billed, and some people may file for abatements. So we are going to always put a number in there for in case people do file for abatements. State and county costs, these are the costs that are on page 2 of the cherry sheet, which is the item that comes out that shows how much money that the state will send back to the cities and towns, and then how much it takes away from us on page 2. And the two biggest items there are MBTA, which is around $600,000 or so, and charter schools, which is a big amount of that there. Cherry seed offsets really is money that goes directly to the library. Snow and ice overdraft. I know we had a lot of snow this weekend, but we don't have a snow and ice overdraft as of yet. So let's hope we don't have too much more. It was tough getting out of town on Monday because of that. So total anticipated expenses matches revenues by the accounting grace, just to get us starting somewhere. It's easy to balance the budget at this point. Next slide, please. So again, I just mentioned that, boy, we look like we're balanced. We look pretty good. Next slide, please. So, oh, did someone have a question? No? I'm
No,
sorry.
keep going, Steve.
Okay, state aid. So what I am usually a little bit more robust in state aid, and I would think we would have a net of 7 or 8%. This year, I'm going with a little bit lower, a net of 5%, because while I think that we will continue to get money, an increase in Chapter 70, which is for education, I think unrestricted local aid may be flat, and I also think that we will be assessed more for the charter schools. So looking at all that, I've settled on a state aid increase, a net increase of 5%. We will know for sure on, we'll know the first number anyway on in a couple of weeks at the Mass Municipal Conference, where normally we'll get the House 1 budget or the governor's budget for next fiscal year. But I think all indications are that Chapter 70 will continue to be robust. Local receipts, like we talked about. Last year, we actually received in fiscal year 23 about 9.4 million in local receipts. So my going with 8 million from a budget standpoint is pretty conservative on that end, but I think we're doing really good on that, and I'll give you some of the year-to-date numbers on that shortly. Health insurance is a budget uncertainty as well, and the reason why health insurance is because we don't have the GIC rates yet. Although I do think that the GIC, the Group Insurance Commission we were in, will go up a little bit more than it has in the last couple of years, but I also think that we have a very healthy OPEB balance, so we may use some smoothing with OPEB there. School priorities, of course, will be a big driver, including the outstanding contract in the school department. Snow and ice, we experienced that weekend, and I don't know what other changes may come out from the state or federal government on policies there, as well as we have a few outstanding contracts, fiscal 25 on the town side and on the school side with the teachers. Next slide, please. So I talked about the actual increase in state aid. I'm not showing on this slide the increase on what they're going to be deducting us for charter schools. So while I'm increasing the page 1 of the cherry sheet by 7%, I think that'll happen in Chapter 70. I think the increase on page 2 of deductions will bring us to the 5%. But that does bring us to the state revenue issue.
Steve, can I just ask a
and-
clarifying question? Sorry. The 7% is just the page 1 increase, but the 5% you referred to on the 1 or 2 slides prior is net of what you're
Yes,
expecting.
exactly.
Okay, just
Net of
wanted
what
to
I'm
clarify the 2 numbers there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I may be a little bit overly optimistic, but we'll find out. State revenue, some of you may know that Governor Healy did announce, well, let's back up for a second. State revenue for this entire fiscal year 24, for the first 6 months of the fiscal year have been lagging in what was projected. Not necessarily lagging what was collected last fiscal year. However, I think in December it actually may have been equal or lagged to that as well. So Governor Healy did come out this week with some, they're called 9C cuts, and it's a section of state law which will allow the governor to make unilateral cuts to the budget. It used to be that the governor could cut state aid, actual state aid, like unrestricted or Chapter 70. A change was made after that happened, and it was, I think it was Governor Romney that cut those in 2008, 2009, which was much more problematic. But, you know, you never like to have money taken away from you. So in this year, what we've heard is that we have 3 earmarks with the state, and these are different than grants. Grants are funded separately, so don't think about grants when we talk about this. But we had 3 earmarks, which were kind of additions to the budget that our state legislature put in for us. One was $65,000 for the bandstand repair. That is at this point is remaining completely in the budget from the governor. Library was $75,000 towards the roof repair. That has been cut in half to $37,500. And sadly, WCAT, I'm sad to give you this news today if you didn't already know. There was a $25,000 earmark in the state budget for WCAT. That's been cut at this point to $12,500. So it's about $50,000 in revenue that the state has cut from Wakefield. In the case of the library, that's a capital issue, and I think we will certainly work on that. And WCAT was operational, so that may be something that the working group on WCAT will further have to look at. We also have some ARPA funds. I want to keep that in the back of everybody's mind. That would some of it be used for type of capital items fiscal year 24? I know we're going to have a presentation on that shortly, and I am still waiting for hopefully some of your items that you prefer to use ARPA funds for. So please get those into me so I can put together a little spreadsheet and we can talk about it. Chapter 70, there was quite a emphasis placed on Chapter 70 and increasing that for communities over the years. And it sounds to me like that is one area that the state legislature is keen to keep. So we'll have to see what happens with that one. Next
Mr.
slide,
Mayo,
please.
just before we go to the next slide, we have a question from Councillor Butt.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for those specific
you're welcome.
earmark cuts. I just was wondering, I was reading an article before coming here because there's, $625 million in cuts. And so they had some bigger buckets. So there was Council on Aging was mentioned that a lot of Council on Aging were going to be cut their funding. I don't know if that's specifically going to affect us.
I don't have any
Okay.
word on. Yeah.
Okay, so as part of the Globe article, like later today, so just be on the lookout. It was one of the big buckets, and then the other big bucket that they're making cuts on, which will just for us to be aware that'll affect, our neighbors in town, is they're cutting TANF, which is technical assistance for families, needy families. So think about your low income families that are going to be affected. They're cutting back some of the reimbursements that they do there, and then also there's a lot of mass health cuts. And so something for just our Board of Health to be aware of those mass health cuts, but not really specifics that I read today, but just something to be aware of.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions on this just before we move on? Nope. All right, Mr. Mayo?
So local receipts has been a real benefit for us over the years. And in 2024, we used Kevin and I put $7,500, $7,500,000 into the budget to balance that. Local receipts came in more than that. We've increased that to $8 million in fiscal year 25, or at least I have. I'm more robust than Kevin is in this area. But year to date for fiscal year 24, we have collected, this is through the end of December, $4.7 million in receipts. A big chunk of that has been the building permit fee for the Head of the Lake project, the 200 corner Poward Ave. That was a big part of that. Excise tax, which is one of the more consistent levels there, about $548,000 so far this year, and there will be a spring excise tax commitment. So I'm feeling very confident we're certainly going to hit those numbers this year. Hotel and meals tax continue to do very, very well and have come back after COVID. It's just, year to date, we've already collected about $650,000 in hotel and meals tax. Last year, for the whole year, we collected a little over $1 million. So I think that's really going to show an increase in that area too. Next slide, please, if there aren't any questions. Only have a couple more. Health insurance, last few years, we've done really good with our health insurance budget by moving employees off to less expensive plans. At this point, I'm holding an increase of about 3% on this, $350,000, because as you recall, the last few years, we have returned a lot of money on the health insurance budget. And however, we are looking at a new actuarial run on our OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, because we have to have that just like our pension. And Kevin and I are working on that. So there may be an ability to smooth the health insurance budget out if our OPEB numbers look a little bit better than first thought. And I think that we're hopeful that that'll be the case there. So we might move some money from the OPEB bucket into the regular health insurance bucket if we need to. But that's a helpful point there. Next slide, please. All right, school department is a big budget, big part of our budget. I will say that they are still, as of when I left, I don't think it happened today. Unit A was, which the teachers union is still not under contract since, I believe, July 1st or September 1st. I'm not so sure how their contracts run. I think it's July 1st. And I know that they are negotiating, and when I know something that is, I will let the board know. But that is a big budget driver overall. Next slide, please. All right, I think that none of us did a good job praying, so I want you all to pray much better. That was a horrible storm. But we haven't had one in a couple of years, so hopefully we won't be too bad.
I will say, I think our prayers were probably offset by the prayers of every school-age child in Wakefield, so we may have been
You
outnumbered.
might have a direct line.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So we do have to consider Prop 2.5 when we're doing this. We do have a policy, and I just wanted to remind the board of this, is that basically each 0.5% on the tax levy is approximately $450,000. In fiscal year 24, following the policy that was voted by the board, we did use $267,000 more of free cash to balance the budget because we had hit all those levels of reserves, and that saved the average tax bill $31 a year. So that's something that we will be looking at as well as we go through here. Next slide, please. So I think there's a few things we can think about here. As things are getting a little bit tighter at the state, I think we need to keep in mind that they are maybe getting some maybe that might happen at the federal government too. We do have ARPA funds that we need to think about over the next, we need to appropriate that by the end of fiscal year '24. We need to expend that by the end of December 31st. No, we need to appropriate by December 31st, 2024. We need to have that expended by December 31st, 2026. The question is, when is something considered expended? So we are looking into that. Is it when you sign a contract for something? Is it if it went into a fund for, we have money for oil and heat and things like that? Can that continue to roll over after that? So we're looking at that to make sure we have some clarity on that issue. FEMA has been very stingy, I'm going to tell you, on how they're looking at things lately. I'm just going to put that out there. Items that they have always approved in the past for disasters and stuff, they're looking at that much more carefully and asking for multiple answers to the same question or asking for the same answer multiple times. Just want to put that into the back of your minds. And will there be more infrastructure money under the Build Back Better program? We have taken advantage of some of that, and we continue to do so. I'm wondering if there's going to be a trickle, as the state, seems to be not bringing in the revenue. Is that going to happen with the federal government? I don't know. I haven't heard that, but things to keep in the back of our mind there. Although that's not a budget item, it is an enhancement item. And last slide, and I think I'm ready for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Any questions from the council? Councilor Jabrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayo, for this. I suspect it's a bit warmer where you are than where we are. On the
I know it's 85.
On the second slide, under current reserves, you have the breakdown. I know that when we've talked about the enterprise accounts, water, sewer, we've often talked about the idea of those reserves and those reserves not really being where we'd like to have them. And I recall back a few years ago, we had a similar situation with snow and ice, and we kind of bulked that up. Has there been any consideration or discussion about where we should be landing, water and sewer reserve wise? Because I think ultimately, it ends up potentially, creating issues for us in the future.
Yeah, I think that, part of our rule of thumb is maybe to have 10% reserves across the board. I think they're not too bad now with water and sewer. Maybe Kevin can add a little bit that, but there certainly is room to increase those a little bit, but we do offset that does offset the rate. One of the funny things about water and water usage is that when water usage goes down, which is great for the environment, it does hurt our department because we don't get paid for that. So I think, Ed, I'll have to get back to you on that to see where we are. I think Joe was comfortable last time I talked to him on it, but let me check on that for you.
And that's fine. I just want to kind of put it out there because as I was going through this, I was thinking, I feel like this one thing that annually does come up, to some extent.
Right.
I feel like we've always kind of been like a bit like on the edge with that. So just something to think about. And I guess the other piece that's not explicitly included in here is the impact of the migrant crisis at the local level, because I know that's becoming a bigger issue in a lot of municipalities across the state, but also obviously across the country. So I would, I'm not asking for an answer from you on that, but I do think that is something else that when you're talking about the state revenue being, below where it was anticipated for 6 months now, how does that added cost ultimately impact either at the state level, local level, or state reimbursement of any kind of local provision that is hoisted upon us as a community? So just something else I think we should be cognizant of.
Yeah, we look at that very, very carefully. I attend a bi-weekly meeting that the MMA puts together with the state on this. And there are some questions that have not been answered yet. An influx of money just went in a supplemental budget to help with this crisis, probably not enough. But some of the questions are to make sure that, payment for students, if that happens, particularly transportation under McKinley-Vento. One little quirk in this is if, some migrants are kept long-term in our hotels, and we have 2 of them in Wakefield, after 90 days, and we haven't had that at all. So, but after 90 days, the state no longer pays the local option hotel tax. Well, that's a revenue side. You hit on the revenue side that you've been counting for because that room is no longer rentable to get that. And you also may be giving services as well, or probably are giving services as well, particularly education after 90 days. So those are ongoing discussions with the state on whether those are going to be covered.
Because to my understanding, I know we haven't had, as best as I know, we haven't had that 90-day or 91-day
it's
situation
very-
as of yet. But we have had, we have had the situation where a state has made placement within our community, and my understanding is that the state wasn't exactly the most generous with opening up the state coffers to make sure that funds that were needed in support were necessarily provided. I know, Mr. Mayo, you've done a very good job of making sure that we get those funds, but it's not something that seemed like it was as automatic as one might expect.
It's a little bit of a struggle, but we'll persevere.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Councilor Danahy?
Thank you, Steve. This was really great, and you always do a great job of putting it together and letting us know where we are, so I appreciate that. I have a question
you.
for you, is like where we were last year and thinking that we were going to have a significant, budget shortfall and it was going to be really very tight. Do you think, and you had said that it's, local receipts helped with that, and then we see new growth, but is that going to be something that we should be seeing in subsequent years, or is this just a bonus win for this year?
Well, it is a bonus win for this fiscal year, which helped us a lot with reserves and everything. But the thing about new growth, then it gets added to your tax levy. So your tax levy increases year over year after that. We've played that out, so that does help us. Local receipts are up, which is really good too. I'm really more concerned right now with the state revenue coming in. We're at least for the town of Wakefield, let's say state aid is, let's use a number that's, not completely true, but pretty close. Let's say it's 9 to 10% of our budget is state aid, okay? If we get a little cut in that, we would be okay. We could figure that out. If you're getting 50 or 60% of your budget from the state and you get a cut in that, then that's a much bigger issue, some of these communities. So I feel much better going into this year than last year because I know what I have. I'll feel probably pretty good on a week from Friday when we get the state numbers, and whatever they are, we're early enough in the process to figure that out. So I feel much better than last year,
Okay,
to tell you the truth.
great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Councilor McLean.
Steve, you had mentioned FEMA. How much exposure do we actually have to FEMA? I was a bit
Well-
puzzled by that.
Well, we really don't right now, but when we do go in for reimbursement under FEMA, they've been much more persnickety than they used to be. Let's put it that way. So we've relied on them in big snowstorms and things like that. During COVID, we relied on them to get some money back or get things covered. And they've been really much tougher than they used to be on that. So,
Is there a general money amount? I mean, 100
No.
grand a year, 500 grand
no,
a year?
it depends on what happens. Completely dependent on the, we don't just get a FEMA check every year that I use for the budget. It's reimbursement for things.
Okay. The only other
The
comment I would
general
have.
trend from them, I'm getting worried about the general trend. I guess
Oh, I
is
hear
what-
that. I hear that with state aid as well and state revenues. And I think last year I made it pretty clear that I wasn't as convinced that our fiscal demise was necessarily, incumbent coming right at us. But I think we have to be very careful this year um, based on the various things we're seeing in terms of state revenue. How much are we actually going to get? I can't, it's not good to hear that we've already got things we were counting on that are being cut. So I think we have to keep all of that in mind this year. And you will be receiving some of my ARPA,
Thank
you know, uh, funding ideas. I will say that I'm not a big fan. I think we've done over 5 million. With our last 5 million, we've done a lot to supplement town budgets. And I'm not a big fan of continuing that with the couple million that we have left. I think rather we should be conservative in, not overestimating our bumps in various budgets. As long as the budget's coming in line, we've got good reserves and we should be in good shape. That's all I have. Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? I'll just say I know we'll have a little bit more clarity in a week and a half or so. I am a little concerned that the numbers we have forecast for state aid might be a little high, but again, we'll have a better sense once House 1 gets released by the governor. So hopefully, Steve, those numbers turn out to be closer to what you've got in this presentation than what I fear they'll be. But we'll see soon enough.
I think last year I was around 99.2% correct, so I don't know if that's gonna be this year, but we'll see.
If we end up there, I'll be very happy, Steve. So we'll have a little pool before next Friday.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, we will, continuing on the budget topic, let's shift to item number 6, which is our fiscal year 2025 budgets. So we've got a series of budgets today, mostly for some of our smaller town hall-based departments. And I will turn it over to our town accountant, Mr. Gill, to kick us off.
I think actually,
Oh, sorry?
Steve, I don't know if you want to give a quick overview.
yes, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay,
I was gonna
my
say
apologies,
that-
Mr. Mayo.
No problem. Just a couple of quick, overview on the budgets in front of you, things to keep in mind. That for the most part, they're pretty, we like to start off with the easier budgets, I should say, to look at some of the smaller departments at the town hall. I will say, keeping with our policy with the finance committee subcommittee has already reviewed all of the budgets. What we met with them, Kevin and I, last week. I don't know if the chair of that subcommittee is in the studio. I guess he may not be. I don't see him on the. Well, I don't see him on the.
He is online, Steve.
Okay, he is. Okay,
Mhm.
good.
I was going to
Great.
say, Sherry, do you mind if we can bring him over to the?
I'm trying. I'm
Okay,
trying.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any event, when Kevin does go, there's Evans coming over now. So when Kevin does go through these, there's a few things that I wanted to point out. Number one, in these budgets in front of you, several of them have members of the clerical union. The clerical union contract expires on June 30th, 2024. So to the extent that these budgets have clerical union personnel in them, there will not be any increase of cost of living for them because we haven't settled the contract yet. We've been through that before. So I didn't want you to be surprised when you saw some union members that, maybe didn't get an increase or was the same as last year, and maybe some got a step, but nothing else as they went through the tracks. That's number one. Number two is that some of the bigger budget increases are completely a function of the election, the extra elections in 2024. So you see election expense and an election registration that's going up. 2024 is going to be a pretty busy election year, and making fiscal year 2025 have an extra election in it. You'll also notice on the assessor's budget, there's a slight change on how Linfield is handling the director of assessments, because they have actually 3 class tax inflation hearings. So they're going to, they did a on their own. They're increasing his compensation there, not on our dime. And I did send out a memo that will affect a couple of the, at least one person in tonight's, looking at longevity for some of our management and really our unrepresented personnel, because they don't get steps and tracks like everybody else does. And with that, I think Kevin can start, if that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if Evan would like to give a statement, or does he want to comment on each and every budget, or just give an overview?
It's up to you, Mr. Kenny, if you'd like to give us some wisdom up front or reserve any comment as we go.
Oh, I think most of the wisdom will come from Mr. Mayo or Mr. Gill, but I did want to just be present. In case you folks had questions that of the subcommittee, we have a great group. Mr. Bean, who's relatively new, who I believe is CFO in Somerville, so he does this for a living every day, and then wants to do it for free for us in Wakefield. So we're grateful, certainly, to have him on the committee. We met to go through the budgets that Kevin and Steve will run through now. Again, like Steve said, these are pretty uneventful. There usually isn't much controversy in this group of town hall subcommittee budgets. But I'll stay on the line here and let Kevin run through it. And if you folks need anything from me, you can give me a holler.
Great, thank you. All right,
Very
go
good.
ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we'll go through 12 of the smaller town budgets. Start off with accounting. We're recommending that this budget be increased $14,168 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down $13,624 coming from the tax levy, $540 coming from a water and sewer transfer. Under personal services, there's an increase of $11,624. Steve had mentioned that there was an adjustment to my pay, 3% COLA, and an adjustment to my longevity. There is a clerical step included, but the clerical contract has not been settled, so there are not adjustments for COLAs with regards to that. Under the expense portion of the budget, there's an increase under contractual services for the professional services line item, which is for the town audit. We currently use Powers and Sullivan, which is a local community. They're located up at the head of the lake. Main expenses within this budget, there's a line item, $28,000 for equipment rental. The accounting department handles the copy machines and printers for the town council, accounting, benefits, tax collector, the building department, council on aging, and the treasurer's office. The professional services line item, $62,000, again, which is for the town's audit. There's a line item, $8,000 for postage, which is used to mail the accounts payable checks. The total budget request for fiscal '25 is $490,152, with $467.74 coming from the tax levy and $23,078 coming from a water and sewer transfer.
Any questions from the council? Mr. Dombrowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gill. I feel like I've asked this before, but with the postage piece, is there a reason that we don't just do online bill pay to eliminate that 8,000 expense?
Where I just don't think that we have the staff to handle the continual upgrade or the continual input that would be needed to the way vendors change names and addresses. It would be very cumbersome in trying to chase down where payments went if a customer didn't receive a payment. It would just be very cumbersome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, unless there's any objection from the council, I think I'm going to hold any voting on these budgets until the end, just so we don't have to do 12 separate roll calls. But if there is, when we do get to the point where we vote, if we do want to take any of them separately, we can certainly do so. I assume everyone's comfortable with that. Great. All right, let's move on then to legal.
Legal budget, we have Tom Mullen tonight. The legal budget, Tom is the department head. We're recommending that this budget be increased $7,633 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down under personal services, a 3% increase, $3,833. We also increased under materials and supplies, the books and publications line item, $3,800. This is used to upkeep the town's legal library. Last couple of years, we've had to do reserve funds to this line item because of the cost to the updates that we've been receiving. Major expenses within this budget, there's a line item outside professional services, which is used for labor attorneys and other expert services as needed. Last year and current year to date, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had to go outside much, so those expenses are lower than usual. But Steve and I talked on that it only takes one or two items for that to get blown up, that you can hit that 60,000 very easily. The total budget request for fiscal 2025 is $206,152.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Just a comment, let's keep those outside legal expenses down if we can. Great. Seeing no questions, let's move on to budget number 7, tax collecting department.
Tax collector's budget, this is Kathy Kelly as the department head. We're recommending an increase to this budget of $7,382. This increase breaks down $7,363 to the tax levy and $19,000 to a water and sewer transfer. The increase in personal services is $3,393. There is a 3% increase for the tax collector, and under the clerical contract has not been settled, so there are no adjustments to other personnel in this department. Under contractual services, we increased that by $3,320. We increased printing and binding, $1,220, professional services, $100, and postage, $2,000, all due to increased costs. Under materials and supplies, there was an increase of $650. We increased office supplies, $250, and printing and reproduction supplies, $400, again, also due to increased costs. Main expenses within this budget, under printing and binding, $6,420. This is used to print the actual and preliminary tax bills. Professional services, $4,850, which is for instruments of taking during the tax title process. And the big line item for postage, $36,500, which is used to mail approximately 67,000 tax bills. The total budget request for 2025 is $311,855, with $249,483 coming from the tax levy and $62,372 coming from a water and sewer transfer.
Great. Any questions from the council or discussion? Councilor Dabrowski.
Oh, just again, and I know I raised this last year, and I spoke to the tax collector on that. This postage amount is so significant, and when you look at it, even as a percentage of the budget as a whole, it's not inconsequential here. And I know that we have an incredibly high collection rate, which is the most important piece. I get that, but I'd really love to see, each year I feel like, technology advancements, if we can at least keep our eyes open to how we can, better utilize technology, because it's almost $40,000 a year for postage. It's not insignificant as a percentage of the whole.
I will comment that Kathy Kelly, the tax collector, she does review that continually every year that she's if there's something out there that makes sense that will save money, she will be.
And I've talked to her about it last year, so it's not a knock on her, certainly, because
Right.
she explained her reasoning, behind it. It's just, it's a big nut for what feels like very antiquated communication means.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that the sense of the council, I'm suspecting the sense of the council is that, to the extent that there's ever an opportunity to address that, either in the tax collecting department or elsewhere, I think we'd certainly want to pursue that. And I think the departments have done a good job of finding those efficiencies where we can. We know this is a tough nut to crack, but, to the extent that it is one that we can address in future years, I think we'd certainly want to do so.
Right.
Other questions with regard to the tax collection department? All right, seeing none, number 8, assessing department, and I see we have our assessor present as well.
Yes, we do. Victor Santinello, the assessing director. We're recommending that this budget be increased $8,951 for fiscal '25. There is an increase in personal services, $5,951. This includes a contractual and negotiated increase for the town assessor in the supervisory personnel. The clerical union has not settled yet, so there is no change there. We also have a change in language in the intermunicipal agreement for the shared services for the director's services. Linfield has agreed to a pay increase and to bump that up by $12,000 a year. So the salary goes up, the reimbursement goes up on the last page, so it's an offset. There is an increase in expenses under contracted services. The professional services line item is up $3,000. This is due to new DOR requirements with regards to how we value the utilities, the main one being the new pipeline that just went in. Main expenses within this budget, the professional services line item. This is used for outside appraisal services, outside personal property services, and expert witnesses for ATV cases as needed. The total budget request for fiscal '25 is $258,875.
Mr. Citinello, could you give us maybe just a 30-second snippet on the DOR changes and how that's affecting your budget? In the layman's terms that I'm sure are not at all sufficient to really capture what's going on, but
Relative
would
to the
appreciate.
Sure. Relative to the valuation of local utilities in town, the DOR about 2 years ago began requiring full narrative appraisals for those properties. And so we have excellent vendor, Real Estate Research Consultants, Inc., that handles our personal property forms, a list, things of that nature. They do charge extra, but they have to provide it. It's additional work. But the reason I stick with them is because they will stand behind their work product should there be a challenge at the Massachusetts Appellate Tax Board.
Great, thank you. And I assume the assumption, or my assumption would be that regardless of who we used for this work, it would
We're
cost
still going to
extra
pay
given
something, and we get the best rate with them.
Yep.
And the good thing about having 3 communities, I'm able to leverage that size with my vendors to try to keep costs down.
Great, thank you. Other questions from the council on the assessing budget? No? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Santino.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, budget number 9, the town clerk department.
Town clerk's budget, we're recommending that this budget be increased $7,386. The increase in personal services is $4,386. There's a 3% increase for the town clerk. Step increases for the clerical position, but no COLA. On the expense portion of the budget, we increased postage $2,500, and we increased office supplies $500 because fiscal '25 is a presidential election year, and the town clerk's office, election and registration, election expense usually go up in the presidential election years. So we do boost up a couple of the small line items there. Major expenses within this budget, Printing and binding, $14,000. This is used to print the town's bylaws, code books, dog licenses, also used to bind old birth, death, and marriage certificates. Total budget request for fiscal '25, $259,479. I do point out that there is revenue collected in the town clerk's office. They collect approximately $70,000 a year over the counter.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the council? Councilor Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, maybe Town Council Mullen, if you might have the answer to this, but the census continues to be mailed and then has to be returned in hard copy form. Is there anything that you're aware of statutorily that requires that to be the case?
I think it does. I think the statute does require that it be mailed.
Because that is the most antiquated. I live 3 blocks from Town Hall. I can drop it into one of those slots, and that gets lost in between my car seats for probably a month before I ultimately am able to drop it by there. It is like, it's the one thing I just want to go online and just complete the census. I mean, if we can, a DocuSign mortgage applications, I think we should be able to do something with the census. So I don't know, and if we have to try to lobby to change the law, I think it's time, because it's the most antiquated system of all. I mean, we're getting this, then you have to we're getting it by mail, then you have to mail it back or drop it off at Town Hall. It just, in 2024, it just seems insane. So if there's some sort of, if we can do it legally and there's some sort of capital investment to make it happen, I think it's money very well spent. But it's the one thing that's very peculiar.
So 2 things on that. One is just a reminder for the public to please return your census forms.
Yes.
That is actually
And
very
dog
important.
licenses.
And dog licenses too. One of the things, I know that the Mass Municipal Association has been working with the administration on kind of a municipal simplification package of ideas, and I think, we can, Mr. Mayo, I think between us, we can make sure that this sort of gets on their agenda if it isn't, as one of those ideas of ways to simplify and kind of create efficiencies for communities. I'm not sure if it's required to be sent out, but as far as I know, just based on what I've seen from other communities, I think everyone is sending it out on paper, which makes me think there's probably some statewide opportunity there for improvement. Councilor Dennehy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that process probably requires a lot of work within the town clerk's office in terms of
does.
processing all of that as well. And I know that office is incredibly busy with everything that they do handle.
It could ultimately also disenfranchise voters too, because if you don't return it, I mean, there's a lot of aspects to it, certainly.
Any other questions on the clerk's budget? No? Seeing none then, let's move on to budget number 10, election and registration.
The election and registration budget, we're recommending that this budget be increased $1,600 for fiscal '25. For the expense portion of this budget, we increased postage $1,500. We decreased the street list line item $400. We increased the office supplies $500. Most of these things were because the presidential election in '25, so there are some small increases. Main expenses within this budget: personal services, $17,100, which is the census workers. Under contractual services, the professional services line item, $12,000. We use a company, LHS. They help with the census mailing, the printing of the ballots, and maintenance on the voting machines. And postage line item, $9,000, which is used for absentee ballots. Total budget request for fiscal '25 is $42,300.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on to budget number 11, election expense.
Election expense, we're looking to increase this budget $13,000 over the current fiscal year. This increase is based on basically the number of elections. We're going from 2 elections in '24 to 3 elections in '25. In '25, we have the state primary, the presidential, and the town election. Main expenses within this budget, the election workers, $19,200. Advertising, $11,250. And the Kira booths, which is the setting up and taking down the voting booths at the voting polls. Total budget request for fiscal '25 is $40,350.
Any questions or discussion? And just for clarity, the three elections we're talking about are the September state primary, the November general election, and then the town election in April of 2025.
Right, correct.
All right, seeing no discussion, budget number 12, Finance Committee.
Finance Committee budget, we're recommending level funding. Main expenses are the cost to print the town's recommendation book for town meeting, $2,800, and the dues and memberships line item, and that is for the Finance Committee's membership in the MMA, $3,600. The total budget request is $7,060.
Any discussions from the council? Councilor Dombrowski.
I'll just say kudos to the Finance Committee for level funding and being fiscally conservative. I respect that.
I was going to say, since we have Mr. Kenny on the line, if anyone wants to give him a hard time over their budget and why they didn't reduce it, this is a good opportunity. All right, seeing none, let's move on to the next one. Item budget number 14, the Planning Board.
The Planning Board budget, we're requesting a $2,200 decrease to this budget for fiscal 2025. We decreased books and publications $2,000. They were using a subscription to CoStar Realty, which they deemed no longer necessary. We also decreased dues and subscriptions $200 based on usage. Main expenses here, the cost for the clerk of their meetings. We budget 24 meetings, two a month, at $200 each. Advertising, $3,000. This is used for meetings and bylaw changes. We'll point out that we do collect some revenue in this department. It varies between about $5,000 and $10,000 a year. The total budget request for fiscal '25 is $10,775.
Any discussion from the council? Seeing none. Next one, budget number 15, the Zoning Board.
Zoning Board of Appeals, we are recommending level funding for fiscal '25. Main expenses within this budget is the cost for their meetings, the advertising, the clerk. Members do receive a small stipend based on the number of hearings. We budget 50 hearings, $600 per hearing, and $300 for office supplies, for a total budget for fiscal '25 of $30,300. And again, I will point out that they do collect revenue, Zoning Board of Appeals. And over the past 4 years, it's ranged from $20,000 to almost $70,000. So there is, depending on the various projects that are going on in town, some of them have been quite large. So we do recoup their budget during the course of the year.
Any questions from the council?
Do they really have 50 meetings a year?
They usually have more. Or hearings, that usually they have 2 meetings a month, but multiple hearings during
Got it.
each meeting.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
And there are also some
Yeah.
hearings get continued from
Yes.
so that
Okay.
it's sort of a, kind of a many-to-many relationship between the number of hearings and the
Right,
number of
hearings
meetings.
doesn't equal meetings, yeah,
Correct.
that's, okay. No, I know it's a very busy committee, I was just like, that's every week.
I will say, just just to speak on sort of the great work that the committee does. They also do have a number of kind of subcommittees and members that work on individual projects, particularly the big developments where they'll have a lot of individuals that do kind of work outside of the meetings as well and meet with the developers and so forth. So it is a lot of work, and really, credit and thanks to them for putting in that type of commitment. Any other questions on the Zoning Board of Appeals? No, seeing none. Let's move on to Budget 25, Council on Aging. Ms. Burke, if you want to come up and join Kevin at the table.
Yes, we have Karen Burke, the Director of the Council on Aging. She's with us tonight. We're recommending that this budget be increased $29,504 over the current fiscal year. The increase in personal services is $30,104, which includes salary increase for Karen Burke and the supervisory union personnel within this department. The social worker received a 3% increase. The clerical received step increases, but no COLA because the contract hasn't been settled. The big increase here was a request for 16 hours a week for the program and activities personnel. Currently, that person is working 19 hours a week. We're looking to make it full-time, so we're looking for the additional 16 hours a week to make that a full-time position. There was a small reduction in the van driver's line item, $2,000 based on usage. Also a small decrease in the expense portion. We reduced office supplies, $600 based on usage. Main expenses here, oil and additives, which is gas for the senior van, $7,800. And the line item for Mystic Valley Services, which is used for Meals on Wheels and in-home care, $6,275. The total budget request for fiscal 2025 is $288,193.
Great, thank you. Ms. Burke, would you mind giving some context, and particularly would be interested in hearing about, the activities and sort of the service changes that we'd expect to see with the staff changing as well?
Absolutely. So we are actually seeking to bring our staffing back to what it was pre-COVID. In 2021, when one of the personnel working at the senior center retired, her full-time clerical/activities position was converted from full-time 35 hours a week to part-time 19 hours a week, with the unknown certainty of if the seniors were going to come back to the senior center after COVID. The seniors are back, and they are back like they haven't been before. We are offering more programs than we were in 2019, averaging, if you look at the yearly balance, we're up from averaging 33 programs a week to 40 programs a week. If I looked at the units, I just did a picture in time from 2019 and then 2023. If we looked at our annual number of units, so the number of people coming to the senior center for an activity, the number is down from 19,262 in 2019 to 17,545 in 2023. But that is 100% correlating with the number of participants allowed per exercise class. In 2019, there would be some exercise classes that would have 45 to 55 people, which gave you about this much space. So for participant and instructor safety, we limit that class to usually 30 to 35. Some classes we can squeeze a few more in if they're strictly in a chair. So that's where the decreased number comes in, but the actual number of programs that we have and the people coming to the classes are absolutely as busy as we were before. So we want to be able to continue this programming. And right now it's just very difficult. I'm the only full-time Council on Aging staff member. Marianne McPherson, who is another full-time person, has 12 hours a week dedicated to the veterans. So her other hours are for COA. We have a 12-hour-a-week social worker, and we have the 19-hour-a-week activities person. We have 3 van drivers that we monitor and continue with dispatch. And we average, I would say, about 40 to 50 phone calls a day. This is a demographic who use the phone and call us for multiple questions or to book their rides. So it's a very busy center. So to maintain the level of service that we want to continue, the increase would be hugely beneficial to us. We have been awarded 2 grants this year from the Mass Council on Aging to increase programming. The first one, and together they total about $18,000, just a little less. And our first one is to expand some age and dementia-friendly capacity building within the Council on Aging. So we are partnering with the Health Department to have some more offerings for that. And the other one is nutrition innovations. And that's where we're really going to see a lot of additions at the center. We want to expand to some evening programming for community meals quarterly, to add some cultural meals into the programming. And starting in 2 weeks, we are bringing back once a week congregate meals through Mystic Valley Elder Services. We've seen a lot of requests for that and a need for that for seniors to have some place to come and share a meal. With the Mystic Valley, it's a $2 suggested donation. So it's a nice, affordable place to come, be social, combat loneliness, and have it just be, a no pressure kind of thing. Come in and eat if you want to come in and eat. You don't have to come in. So we're hoping to really increase and reach some people we're not currently reaching through some of these new programs, but also continue the programming that we are offering.
Great, thank you. I have to say, I'm floored by hearing that you get 40 to 50 phone calls a day. That's definitely above what I would have expected, even knowing the great attendance that you have at the center every day and the amazing breadth of programs. Any questions or discussion from the council? Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair Chines. Yeah, when I visited with you last month, the phone did ring incessantly during that time I was sitting in your office. The activities position that you have right now, because it's part-time, there's activities that are taking place and your activities person can't be there for those activities because you're just a part-time employee. How do you fill that void right now?
It's all hands on deck. I do a lot of activities. Really, who's ever there does. We've been utilizing volunteers for some things. Our tax work-off program, we maximized the number of participants this year, so we had a full 20 seniors participating in the tax work-off program. So we utilized 5 of those people within the senior center, and then it was the first year that we've really branched them out to many different departments. So that's a big success story that we're pretty proud of. But we're using anything we can to make it happen. But it's just all hands on deck.
And you've been using volunteers to help as receptionists as far as taking the phone call and just leaving notes for you.
Yes, and when we had our senior resource fair, for example, my board came in and they volunteered and they helped answer the phone for us when we were at the resource fair. I have non-tax work-off volunteers that come in and help with those things, and they have the tax work-off people who are here to also help with those things. Like, for example, our nurses that take blood pressures are tax work-off volunteers.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Dombrowski.
I would just say that first off, I think you do a tremendous job. The Council on Aging, the Senior Center, it's incredible. I do think that this is a unique budget in that as we continue to have a more a graying population, that I think we really have to think about this differently than a lot of the other budgets that we look at, where we look at percentage increases per year, whatever the case is. I think to your point, it's almost like a chicken and an egg. If you have the capacity, you're going to have more people coming to these exercise classes. But when you're limiting, then your numbers are down. So I don't think the numbers are a true reflection of the interest in the senior center. And I think over time that's going to change. So I think when we look at the operation budget in the years to come, I think we have to really do a deep dive into what we're projecting in terms of people that are eligible or interested in coming to the senior center as people, as baby boomers continue, to retire and the like. And I think also from a capital standpoint, there is a tremendous need, but also tremendous opportunity within that building to be able to create more spaces for you to be able to have the kind of robust programming that you're talking about. I know we've looked at the upper floors and opportunities there as well. And it's just a natural complement to what you're doing to be able to create the space and environment so that you can have expanded programs and go in a lot of different directions that I know you're interested in and your team is interested in doing. So I think it's important for us to be mindful that operationally this might not be a 3% increase each year going forward of the next several years, but also from a capital standpoint, making the senior center and the services provided a priority in terms of how we can do build outs. And I know even in the basement, for instance, you're being very creative in terms of the partition wall so that you can have different programming at the same time. Those are all important things, but you also have floors above you too that we've talked a lot about. Hey, what's the best way to utilize that space? So I think the senior center needs to be higher on the priority list going forward, and it may not be just a gradual increase necessarily. There might be some steep ups in certain years because there are so many residents that are positively impacted by what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dennehy.
I just have questions. How do you notify people of the services? Do you do a mailing to people over a certain age in the community?
We do. So right now we mail out, we do a newsletter every month. July and August we combine, and we mail it out 6 times a year. Because of the cost, we only mail it out the 6 times. I use formula grant funds to buy the postage for the newsletter mailings, and then the other months we have it available at, they're always online. They're on, we do an emailing, so anybody who wants to get it emailed can let us know, and we email it every month. They're also available at Town Hall, the library, and the senior center. But we do 6 times a month, send it out to everybody in the mailing, and people love their mail.
Yeah.
They like to get it. They love the months that we mail it.
Great. Councilor Butt.
So agreeing, Karen, you've done such a great job. Thank you so much. And agree with what Councilor Dabrowski said. The senior center, I think, is a great resource. And I think Steve presented about some potential of that building. So I think we will have a future conversation about that. I'm just going to also encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing, is meeting seniors where they're at. And so partnerships throughout the entire town. I think we have a great senior center, but partnership with the library, partnership with the rec department behind you. I think there's lots of other places. The Fit Corps is an excellent example of moving beyond the building and creating something that seniors in the town use. So I think like continuing, and now, you know, with an additional half-time staff person, to think about other places in Wakefield where we can do like joint activities for seniors is going to be really important as we get more seniors who want to, who we want to do activities for, that they can read about in the mail that they get.
Thank you. We were just talking about that, actually.
Yeah, so I think like, we created a new pickleball field, and we'll have a great walking path, and, you know, like, there's just so many opportunity outside of that building too, because it's a great building. It's not the most convenient for everyone, right? So I do hear from seniors that it's a little out of the way. And we have a library downtown. We have the ACE building, the Civic Center. Like, we have so much downtown. To think about some partnerships would be great. To continue to think about it, because you have thought about it.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, well, seeing none, I just want to echo the thanks of everyone on the council for the great work that the Council on Aging does. I mean, you know, you guys really have always been sort of a lifeline for the seniors in our community. I think we saw that in full force as we kind of dealt with the COVID pandemic, and I'm very excited that, you know, the programming is back and more robust than ever as we've kind of come out of that. I mean, it's such a lifeline to people in the community. It's such a great resource. And you and your staff do a tremendous job. So thank you for what you do and for continuing to find ways to reach out and connect folks in our community.
Thank you all.
Great. All right, well, we will move on to budget number 27, the last budget for this evening, the Recreation Department. So
Yes,
Mr. Gill, and I see Mr. McGrath is coming up to join us too.
Dan is here. Hi, Dan. The recreation budget, we are looking to increase this budget $5,118 over the current fiscal year. This increase is all in personal services and is for a contractual and negotiated increase. Dan does follow the supervisory union contract. And this budget is covered from fees generated by the programs and activities, which is then deposited into the general fund to cover Dan's salary. The expense portion of this budget is funded out of the recreation revolving account. Last fiscal year, we collected almost $600,000 in fees for programs and activities for recreation. We expended $576,000. The current balance within that revolving account is $117,000. And the total budget request for 2025 is $130,814.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion from the council? Yes, Councilor
I'll
Smith
just say,
Galvin.
wow, that's amazing. $600,000? I mean, that's,
We're growing.
and how would you say it breaks down between youth and adult? Because I feel like you have a really good mix of programming.
So it's mostly youth, because
Okay.
that's our
Sure.
base. That's what we do. But pickleball's really catching up.
Yeah.
I knew it would.
That is just, it's like nothing I've seen in the 20 years I've been doing this. So
Wow.
yeah, it's growing every single day.
That's great, and I think they keep coming back to us, to Wakefield, because they feel welcome here.
We
So
sure do.
thank you. I think it's great work you're doing. Keep it up.
Councilor Danahy.
Thank you. I have a question. When I was on school committee, it used to be community education. It was community ed, and then for a multitude of reasons, that ended up not continuing through the school department, and there was always discussion about the town taking that over. Has there ever been any discussion about?
So Steve and I have certainly talked about it over the years. The VOC currently does a lot of adult ed stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm not one to step on toes.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'd rather work and supplement
Yeah.
somebody than to compete against.
Yeah.
So we're evolving, especially now with the Albion Culture Exchange,
Yep.
into some more adult programming that we can do that I
Yeah.
think will supplement what
Yeah.
they do.
Good.
I'm never going to get into the computer class.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
never going to get into the do your own tax kind of stuff. That's not my wheelhouse.
Right.
But there's other things that we can do that aren't being done to offset.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Gill.
Just one quick overview of the 12 budgets that we did tonight. In total, up a little bit more than $91,000, or 4.8%. Of that 4.8%, 2.8 were for the regular budget increases, and about 2% were for the one-time, the extra election, and the half-time person at the Council on Aging. So we are trying to keep the budgets as lean as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. And I think with that, I will ask for a motion to approve the 13 budgets?
12.
12 budgets as presented this evening.
So
So moved.
All right, I had a motion from Councillor Butt, a second from Councillor Smith-Galvin. Any discussion on the motion in total? No? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Vice Chair McLean?
Yes.
Councillor Vincent?
Yes.
Councillor Dennehy?
Yes.
Councillor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Councillor Butt?
Yes.
Councillor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill, Ms. Burke, Mr. McGrath, Mr. Santinello for the presentations and the overview. I know Kevin will be seeing a lot of you over these next few months, so
Yes,
we'll
you
keep the seat warm for you for 2 weeks from now and every 2 weeks after.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank
Good
you.
night.
Thanks.
And oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kenny, for joining us as well.
Good evening,
Uh,
councilors.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 7, an update regarding the Albion Cultural Exchange Facility. So, Mr. McGrath, we'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. So it's been exciting being over there. It's obviously a different challenge because the world of art and culture is not my strength in life. I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm more of the sports, the recreational stuff. But this has been a fun project so far. So since we took over the management of the facility, which is sometime in early May, I've met with countless artists and those within that world to see how the space was used previously, what we want to see going forward. Everybody's been very receptive to us as being the management over there, which is exciting. I kind of thought going into this, there might be a little pull or tug. Not at all. Everybody's kind of jumped on board and said, hey, let's ride this out and see where we can take this. So, I formed some great working relationships with the Arts Cooperative of Wakefield, specifically Joyce Schilling and Kathy Fry. They've been wonderful. I speak to Kathy on probably every other week basis at this point, just to kind of see what they want to do and how we can accommodate them. I think one of their fears when I walked through the door was, oh, we're gonna be pushed out of here. And my thing was absolutely not. This is an arts building, and you are from my standpoint, the arts hub of Wakefield. So we want to make you feel welcome and engaged at all times. So we have a great working relationship there. We've had the AP art show from Wakefield High when it first took it over. We had the Wake Up annual breakfast this year there to highlight the facility.
In my early dealings, I found out a lot of people didn't know what the Albion Culture Exchange was. They knew it was a building, but they didn't know what went on there. So we're trying to get more boots through the door. We had the Arts Council reception. We've had the Arts Collaborative of Wakefield. They had their From the Ground Up art show. The room to right is using it for meeting space occasionally. And if we are ever able to renovate the second floor, they would be one of my first tenants there. You know, I think that they really fit in for the vision of the building, or my vision of the building. We have open mic storytelling nights. I don't know if anybody's ever attended those. They are wonderful. And, you know, Jess and Lori, who run it, two great Wakefield residents, a lot of fun, tell some great stories. And they have great backgrounds. You know, one worked for the Ellen Show, one worked, you know, did a lot of comedy in New York. So they know what they're talking about. And when they say, this is what we want to do, who am I to say no? Because again, this isn't my strength in life. It is find those who have that strength and let's give them their forum. So we've done that. We had the Paul D'Angelo art show, which was the Art of Stand-Up. That was in September. That was on the books before we took over, but fantastic show, some great pieces of work that he had, and he was wonderful to work with himself. We have done the Arts Collaborative did another show, Critters and Creatures, which was wonderful. We've met up with Big Attitude Improv, gentleman Brian Augusto, who's a Wakefield resident, actually lives across the street from the Albion Culture Exchange. And he has done improv all over the place, and he's bringing in different acts once a month, and those are going very well. And again, fabulous to work with. And if I've needed a piece of equipment, we did invest in some stuff. We bought speakers, we bought a sound system, because we needed that. If I'm going to have these shows, I need to have the equipment. But I was short a mic stand, and one day, hey, Brian, do you have an extra mic stand? Absolutely, brought it right over, knew what we needed. So we have great working relationship going on there. The Boston Pen people with David Watts, they had a little show there one weekend. The Arts Collaborative Wakefield is doing drop-in days for drop-in and art. So people have pieces they want to work on, they can bring it there and get help from the other artists. So they do the second Tuesday of every month in the mornings, and then they do the second Wednesday of every month in the evenings. So kind of give people who may be working or may not, give them some options. We were a staging area for the holiday painting, for the window displays. They were fabulous. They did the Albion Culture Exchange. They also came down to the Civic Center this year, which was great. So it made our place a little bit more welcoming. The Chamber of Commerce has done a paint and sip night there. The Arts Collaborative had, the Arts Collaborative of Wakefield had their artisan show and sale in early December. The Wakefield Wool Pack is a group of residents who, it's like a textile group. They've started renting there, or not renting, because I'm not charging anybody yet, but they're using the space the second and fourth Tuesday of each month in the evenings to, again, work on projects of people who are knitting or whatever it may be. They're wonderful. The Merry Lion had an event at the Albion Culture Exchange for local women-owned businesses, and they did a little sale there. They were fabulous. The setup for the facility looked great. I almost kind of wish we could have left some of it full-time because it was that good. But they were fun to work with. The Chamber also did a women in business luncheon. We did the Wakefield High School a cappella, did their little show before the holidays. We've had several rec classes there. We've done Legos. We've done adult tap dancing. We've done Little Lights Yoga, which was a Mommy and Me yoga program. The Children's Playhouse of Wakefield, which is one of our bigger programs. They were originally supposed to be housed there, but their numbers were so big that Karen graciously gave us space over the senior center to use. That's worked well for us. We've done a jewelry making class there, fashion design class there, kissing ball workshop for adults, floral arrangement workshop for adults. So we've had a lot of stuff go on there, and quite honestly, we're just scratching the surface of what can actually be done within that facility. The second floor, all items that had been left behind, we contacted everybody who was involved with the facility, said, you might want to get your stuff out here because we are going to have this place gut. So we got all the rugs up. We have everything that needed to be removed. That was done through, the work was done and arranged through DPW, and it went really well. So we have a nice empty space up there, or spaces up there, that hopefully we can turn into some revenue generating spaces at some point. the biggest thing is to make that happen, we need handicap access, and we need some sort of an elevator lift system. So, but I know that's all in time. We've had this building for 6 months. Things just don't happen like that. So, going forward, I'm still in the process of evaluating how the space has been used and is used. When we get through the winter, I now have a real idea of how it's gone. So after the winter session, I will go before the Recreation Commission with some sort of proposal as to here's what I think that we can charge, not necessarily for the spaces upstairs, but for use of the gallery. Because I feel like there's a lot of uses for that space. My intended goal would be to keep it within the desired use for that space, but we may stray from there from time to time. If there's a retirement party, if there's a reunion or something like that that we can put in there that fits the space, it's not going to be overly crazy. We keep those down at the Civic Center. We want to keep this within the intended use of the space. Erin Kokinda, a wonderful partner, much like Karen, is having a meeting with MAPC over there just to highlight the building and show it as a success story. I'm working with the youth leaders to find a date to do an open coffee house. So they want to do where kids can come and maybe do a song or do a poem or do a story. So we're working with that. The whole goal, I think, if the wheel's not broken, if you don't change it kind of deal. Well, Follow Your Art in Melrose has a similar facility to the Albion Culture Exchange. It's privately run as opposed to publicly run. I want to kind of follow their model. It works really well. I actually have a plan to go over there and go see their spaces, so I kind of know, are we comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges? I kind of want to know what I don't know. But these are kind of the plans going forward. It's been a big benefit for our department to be able to have more space. Every department wants more space, especially for programming wise. I'm always looking for more, so it's great to have that as an access. It's great to have the senior center because Karen again is a great partner to be able to use space over there. You can never have enough of it. But I see this place really evolving and eventually becoming a revenue generator. Right now, it's not bringing anything unless I do stuff programmatically. But I think there's ways to do it and to make it more of a benefit to the community. That's a untapped resource that we can really, do similar to what we did with the Civic Center. The Civic Center was underused when we got there. I can't find an hour in the day right now where there's for anybody to come in and sit there and even for the custodian for her to clean the floor, the poor thing. We are booked 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. there every day, including the weekends. I hope that we can do that with the Albion Cultural Exchange within a couple years. So yeah, so that's kind of all I have.
Well, thank you. I'm just gonna, take sort of chair's prerogative and say I'm just incredibly excited by this update. I mean, you've been doing this for 6 months, and you talk about the fact that this isn't your wheelhouse, but what is your wheelhouse is the enthusiasm you have for it and the energy you've put into the building. The fact that we've activated the space more, we've brought different groups in that maybe weren't there before. The fact that we've, continued to support the visual arts community, but have broadened the definition of arts in the space to include performing arts, right, and other forms of visual art that maybe weren't getting there before. I have to say, I mean, this is an incredibly exciting update, and I'm really enthused about, the prospects that we have for that facility going forward. So thank you for the work that you're doing, the work that your committee is doing as well.
Thank you for trusting me with
it. And thank you as well, I will say, for, the folks in the community, the Arts Collaborative in Wakefield, the Room to Write, our businesses that have been partners with you in that. I mean, I think this really represents the best of what, public-private partnership in a community like ours can do. And like I said, I'm just unbelievably excited about what we can do in the future here. So appreciate the update today.
I appreciate you guys trusting me with it because, we've had success at the Civic Center, and it's a different beast. I knew what I was going to do before I got to the Civic Center. Again, you take your time to evaluate things because I've run a facility before, a gym facility before. It was second nature to me. This is different, but there's a lot of crossover. Again, arts aren't my thing. My youngest daughter's a dancer, and I tell her to this day, she's 15, I don't understand it. Yeah, I don't. And she's wonderful. And when I go and I watch her, I'm amazed at it. But I don't understand the scoring of it. I don't. I need to know those things. I figured out cheerleading with my oldest. I still don't understand dance, but I know when I see something that looks great. So with this space, it's how many more arts can we get in there? I want to bring culinary arts in at some point. Arts isn't just visual, and I know that that's traditionally how it had been used, and that's okay. Me, I want to go as big as we can and as far as we can.
Great. Well, thank you. Let me open it up to discussion. Councilor Butt.
So just to echo Dan, when you listed everything that you've done, I can't believe that you just took over the management in May and everything that you've done since May. So thank you. I think the council last year saw the potential of that building, and so thank you for helping realize that. I know it's been with Steve's help. I think DPW, Karen, everyone. I will say, you talk about it being a revenue generator, and that is important, but it is more important that you're creating a community space that's welcoming, and that everyone has gone to something that you've done there. So whether it be for an art show, or I know Councillor Smith Galvin went to the story slam. I couldn't make it when she went, but I think that to me is more important. Is that is one of our visions that we have of creating welcoming space and creating community, and so you've done that. And then I just encourage anyone watching, reach out to Dan. So if you have an idea, a lot of what you mentioned, the wolf pack, I've been getting the emails about that. So if you're interested in anything that he mentioned or anything he didn't mention, reach out, see if we can collaborate and bring something to Wakefield that it hasn't been here yet. So
most of the ideas came from residents who reached out online through Facebook or whatever it was, and I'm an open book. Let's go check out the space and see how you want to use it.
So I think that is probably the most exciting thing moving forward is, let's have those conversations and see the potential of that building. And then to my colleagues, let's figure out the elevator and accessibility issue as our next big thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Dabrowski, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan, you've done a phenomenal job. This building was never intended to be just an art gallery.
Right.
I think it became known as that to some folks, and most nights when I would walk by, it would be dark.
Right.
And that was never the intention. So I think the collective sentiment here was, let's get this building online.
Yeah.
Let's make it like a part of the vibrancy that is our community. And you have totally reconceptualized how to use this space in a really meaningful way, in a really impactful way. So congratulations to you on doing that, because I know it's no easy task, but it's a testament to your talents, and as you say, you don't need to know everything about every form of arts,
Right.
but you need to be able to know how to manage and encourage people and get them thinking about what they can do, so they can bring in their core competencies. In thinking about the space going forward, the upstairs, one thing I would encourage you to think about, and I always try to bring it together when we can, is the Voc and what the Voc can do from a construction perspective, because cost-wise,
Sure.
that's huge. But also it gives a really great opportunity and a real sense of pride and accomplishment. And again, it brings more people into the building,
That's right.
to understand and appreciate it. So whatever you can do, just keep doing it. But I feel like so many more people understand that space is there, understand that it's a public space, a part of our town,
Right.
and that there's a good chance that on a given night or even day, there could be something pretty cool going on there. So be tuned into it. And perhaps we're working with Jen McDonald more too, and being able to kind of promote some of these things.
Yep.
You have the kiosk that's right basically at the corner there.
Yep.
Other ways to kind of get that out.
And Jen's been great with that.
Yeah,
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 she
certainly.
really has.
Because I mean, it's amazing that this has been since May, less than a year,
Yeah.
and where you've brought this place. So thank you, and just onward.
Thank
All I
you.
can say. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions from the council? Well, thank you. Again, this is unbelievably exciting, and I think, at least for me, this has kind of exceeded what I expected when we took over management of the facility.
It's been fun.
Really appreciate all your work here. Look forward to more updates, and look forward to hearing from you again as you kind of conceptualize what the go-forward plan is, how we think about a facility rental policy and so forth.
And as I say to everybody who I talk to about that space in the Civic Center, if you all have ideas that you want to see, let me know. I will find somebody who has that medium and we'll get it over there. That's the goal. You know, want something for everybody.
Absolutely.
Including cricket.
Dan,
Including
yeah,
cricket.
Cricket.
You had cricket.
We did
Not
that.
playing in the not playing in the
No,
facility,
outside.
right?
He played outside. It was
Okay.
amazing.
Dan, can you just remind everyone when indoor pickleball is in the winter?
So it's every day during the work week, Monday through Friday mornings,
Do you hear that, Steve?
9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at least.
My wife plays. My wife loves Dan.
She's over. Jean's over there a lot. Oh,
I will tell you, my mom said to me the other day, she started playing pickleball, and she said, I just wish there was a place that I could go on like a drop-in basis to play pickleball. And I said, we have it in
Yeah.
Wakefield.
Yep. Every other town hasn't figured it out yet. We
I
figured it
know.
out.
We're the place to go.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Happy
you all.
New Year. Great
Appreciate it.
work
Same to
on
you guys
this,
as well.
and look forward to hearing more in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8A, licenses. We have a chunk of 2024 business license renewal. Oh, sorry, Steve, were you?
If it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, if you don't need me, I'm happy to answer any questions right now, but before my wife writes a check to Ed for a retainer, I better get out of here.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayo. Thank you so much, and enjoy
you.
the rest of your time away.
Thank you.
Certainly
Thank you.
better than you probably enjoyed the last hour and a half with us.
No, it was fine. It was great. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Item 8A, license renewals. We have a set of business license renewals for 2024. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Counselor Smith-Galvin, seconded by Counselor Butt. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the slate as presented. Vice Chair McLean,
Yes.
Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Danahy,
Yes.
Counselor Smith-Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski,
Aye.
and myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8B is a one-day liquor license for a Wakefield hockey event at the AmeriCal Civic Center on February 2nd. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor McLean,
Yes.
Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Danahy,
Yes.
Counselor Smith-Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Dabrowski,
Aye.
and myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item 9, we have donations in the amount of $175 for the Council on Aging. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
And a second. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor McLean,
Yes.
Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Danahy,
Yes.
Counselor Smith-Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Drabowski,
Aye.
and myself, yes. Item 9B, we have donations in the amount of $710 for the BB Library. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Vice Chair McLean,
Yes.
Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Danahy,
Yes.
Counselor Smith-Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Dabrowski,
Aye.
and myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item 10, warrant update, Counselor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair Chines. Warrant 22, 3.858 million. Of note, 1.2 million of that was town council's budget for Wakefield Memorial High School. Warrant 24, 6.388 million. Of note there, group insurance was 1.3 million, light department 1.7 million, public works 1.365 million. Warrant number 25, just $5,585.06 from the town clerk. It's postage for the census. Thought I'd highlight that one. And warrant number 26, $4.648 million. Once again, of note, almost 1.3 million of that is from the town council for the Wakefield Memorial High School expenses, new high school. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Counselor Vincent? I should highlight for the public, anytime over the next couple of years that you see very large numbers in the town council budget, those will be for the high school project.
That's why I mentioned those, yeah.
We on our own don't spend all that much money. All right, thank you, Councillor Vincent. Item number 11, approval of the December 11th, 2023 Town Council meeting minutes. Do we have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, any objection to approving the minutes? No, seeing none, minutes are approved by acclamation. Item number 12, announcements. Councillor Dennehy?
I have one. I just, recently on December 19th, Jim Moshe passed away, and I just want to remember Jim Moshe. He was a neighbor of mine, but he was also on the police force for 32 years, and he was a detective. Born and raised in Wakefield, and he made great contributions. I know how much he loved Wakefield. I know how much he loved being on the police force, and he had an illness that, that he wasn't able to continue longer. But I just want to say that he was just a wonderful person on the Wakefield Police Department, and he will be sadly missed in our community. And thank him for his service and condolences to his family.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Other announcements? Councillor Nabrowski.
Just two briefly, and I'll say that Michigan is ahead 17-3.
Oh.
I was curious. I had mentioned, I guess about 3 months ago or so now, that Shelby Nickerton, who is the commander of the USS Thomas Hudner, had been on her way back with her crew, traveling through the Middle East around the time of October 7th, when the conflict or the terrorist attack in Israel and the conflict that ensued. So she was relieved of her duty as commanding officer, and she was honored with the Bronze Star Medal back on January 5th. It's a tremendous honor. She makes Wakefield incredibly proud. She is just a phenomenal person, and she had been with her entire crew out for a long while. They thought they were heading home, and then obviously world events changed that trajectory, at least for a couple months' time. And so I just wanted to recognize her and acknowledge her selfless service to our country, and I'm just incredibly proud that she's one of us in Wakefield. So thank you to her for that. And I also wanted to, on a lighter note, but also important, thank our DPW for the incredible work they did with the first real storm of the season that we had. It was great to see how easy it was, both sidewalks, crosswalks, and roadways for people to be able to get around pretty quickly, despite all the snow that we did have. So shout out to the DPW, always do a great job, but often I think probably underappreciated for the work that they do. So thank you to all of them as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other announcements? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair Chines. I was going to mention Commander Nickerton too, because on New Year's Eve I was at a military officers luncheon, and I had the privilege of sitting with her parents, her husband, and her 4-year-old daughter. And my wife Tracy and I sat with them for a couple of hours. I had never met them before, delightful people, and they were on their way heading down to Mayport for the change of command. And Shelby's actually going to be stationed down in Newport, Rhode Island, so she's going to be a lot closer to home now. And back, of course, with her family. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Butt?
So just want to remind everyone that our annual MLK Day event will be on Monday, January 15th, so a week from today, right?
Mhm,
Yeah, a week from today, 10 o'clock at the Galvin Middle School. Always a great and meaningful event, so hope to see a lot of people there.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just add on, I think they're still taking nominations till the 11th
The 11th, yeah, I just read.
for the MLK.
Okay.
So if anybody has who has done tremendous service, I know we have a lot of people in town, you can still nominate until till January 11th.
I have just a couple of announcements to share. First of all, Mr. Mayo mentioned the Mass Municipal Association Annual Conference is coming up a week from Friday, and many of us do attend that. One of the things we'll learn at that conference is about an award that's being given to one of our departments. So I wanted to congratulate our Health and Human Services Department. The regional model that we have in place with Stoneham and Melrose is being recognized with the Kenneth E. Picard Municipal Innovation Award in recognition of the great work that they do and the way we've really been able to expand our services collectively with our neighboring towns. So thank you to Director Choi and all of his team. Thank you as well to our colleagues in Stoneham and Melrose for being great partners there. It's a well-deserved recognition, and glad to see that. Two other quick things I wanted to mention. The Scholarship Foundation of Wakefield's Team Trivia Challenge is coming up later, actually early next month, Saturday, February 3rd at the Elks. Doors will open at 5 p.m., so encourage people to sign up for that. It's actually a lot of fun and really a great time and some great competition. Finally, with the snowstorm yesterday, I certainly want to echo Councilor Dabrowski's thanks to our Department of Public Works. I also do want to recognize all of the members of our youth committee who participated in the Snow Angels program. We had a number of young people in town who volunteered to help clear sidewalks and walkways and steps for some of our senior residents. I know that they're always looking both for more volunteers for that, but also more participants to the extent that individuals need help with their own homes. That's a service that's available to them. So great job by the Youth Council for organizing that, and again, all the volunteers who participated in that. Any other announcements from anyone? No? All right, seeing none, item 13, any matters not anticipated for the agenda? Seeing none there, we will move to item number 14, adjournment. Our next town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 22nd at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, any discussion or objections? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned at 8:58 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and have a great night, everyone.